Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you're all doing fine today. You're listening to a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. I am said Martha Novak, and we're talking about all sorts of things that have to do with consciousness on the show, so that our lives can be easier and more joyful and more fulfilled, quite frankly. I found an interesting article this week that was called 25 Signs You Grew Up Feeling Invalidated. I didn't see an actual author of this because there are many authors of this. These are from people that wrote in when they put the word out and said, here's how I felt invalidated, here's what my parents did. I thought the list was very good. Actually, I've made it 24 because one of them was a bit redundant. So I have a few things to say about this in terms of the show. Hi, everybody clicking in. I'm so glad to see you. Well, hey, well, come on. Adnan. I like that name, Adnan. Anyway, by all means, join. We are delighted to have you in our community. And we have lots of fun here, at least I hope we do. I have a lot of fun here, I should say. I don't know about you. Anyway, guys, we're glad you're with us. Let's do a quick prayer, get us all on the same page, get me on the same page with you. And then we're going to talk about invalidation and how important it is in our lives and how we go about healing from some of this. By the way, because this is... because these things have been normalized by us as children, that doesn't mean they don't still bother us, hurt us, and cause certain behaviors now as an adult. So very important for us to take out the normalization that helped us survive through all this, even though what was done and what was done in our early childhood's homes should probably not have been normalized. We did it to get through. Fine, all children do that. But now that we're adults, it's really important to take the, what do I want to say, the glamour off the family and look at it realistically. And look at what was said to us and what we did with it. You know, that's all it is. That's how we heal, right? Indeed. All right, here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, thank you so much for the opportunity of all of us to be together again. How fun. And we ask now that we hear, sense, see, and know what you would have us do as we listen to this message, as we write some of these things down and mull them over and think about our own childhoods and our own lives. We thank you so much, dear God, for everything. And we are open to change and growth and the opportunity inherent in those things. And now we say we know nothing, for it is you, through us, and through all things that know it all. And we open to that. And we are in such gratitude. Thank you, and so it is. Amen. Well, thank you very much for that, dears. Okay, here we go. Validation, invalidation, wonderful words. Even now, hi, Sheila. Oh, good morning, darling. Thank you. Even now, as adults, sometimes if we have not been validated or we haven't even given thought to validation, we really don't know what it is. I think validation is extremely important. I think it's, good morning, Becky. Good morning to you, dear heart. For those of you that are listening on the radio, I am talking to people that are writing me on Facebook Live, because these radio shows are filmed. So thank you so much, all of you. It's just so good to be back with my friends again. I am in the process, as you all know, before we start talking about validation, I'm in the process of buying a new house. We have not yet moved, but we do close in about 3 weeks. And so it's very exciting, and I'm trying to be very faithful with these shows because I'll probably have to take a couple of weeks off to move, 2 or 3. And, you know, I am so grateful. There's nothing like moving that makes you enormously awed by your friendships and the dear people around you who say, I'll come help. And some of them that don't even know us, you know, I'll come help. It's like, oh my God, thank you so much. You know. Hey, oh yes, Michelle. Michelle is saying, did you get the house you wanted? You know, Michelle, we did. We did indeed. I think our dear neighbors smiled on us, and we've had a huge friendship through the years. I love these people with all my heart. And so while they had other offers, and this is Schnitzel, of course, coming to get in the middle of it all, while they had other offers, they were kind enough to want us as good stewards in their home, taking the energy forward that they'd already created. And this is Schnitzel, guys. And Schnitzel is a very loving kitty that always has to be in the middle of everything when we do these sessions. So I think all of you now know almost all my kitties and all my dogs. Although we are house sitting the neighbor's dog today, Tessa, and she's quite the wonderful yellow lab. So going back to this, validation and invalidation, I think, is an important topic. Well, you spell Schnitzel right, Michelle. Good for you. That's a hard word, I know. We call Tafel because it means potato in German, Kartoffel. And he and Schnitzel are good friends, and you always have potatoes and Schnitzel together. You know, my husband's Austrian, so anyway, we have animals named after food. I even have a little cat named Figgy Pudding because she came at Christmas. All right. I think so many times we don't know what validation is. But validation to me is starting where someone else is. There's an element of compassion to it. There's an element of empathy to it. It's just starting where someone else is. But you keep in mind that it's a different world right now, or it's trying to be, than it did when all of us were growing up. Our parents, so many times, just didn't know any of this. They didn't care. They didn't know. They had too much to do. They were trying to make a living, and many, many other excuses we can give. The fact of the matter is this. No one ever advocates for the child that was wounded, but the child as it grows up. That's the true advantage here, is that you all are beginning to hear some of these things that happen that you've normalized, and you're going, wait a minute, that really wasn't right. And I can see how that is influencing my behavior now. I will say, with all my heart, you guys, get pads and pencils and write some of these things down that we are going to talk about today, and give yourself some time to think about them. Not just these 90 minutes. It is fall, and pollen is out there, so my nose runs from time to time. Excuse me. And it will do you a world of good if we do that. So let's go into some of these points. The 24 signs that told people they were invalidated growing up. As I said, these things are written by the listeners or the people that were writing into whatever community this is. Number 1, you were told that you were too emotional. This young lady goes on to say, not having a voice with my family members has left me feeling anxious today. She was told to just calm down. She was being too dramatic. She was yelled at for crying. She was ridiculed. Her father and her siblings would make fun of her. You keep in mind that whatever the parents do, however they present to one of their children, is how their siblings, it gives the siblings permission to feel the same way. Do the siblings feel the same way? Well, not necessarily if they grow up and grow past some of this, but to fit in with the mother and the father, to be liked and therefore to survive. Kids often follow suit. They become the little hecklers, the little ridiculers, the little humiliators, like their parents are. Okay. She goes on to say, another woman here in this article says that she had to learn as an adult that sensitivity is a good thing. Here's something I want to put on the table. People do not speak precisely enough. A lot of times, you can mix up sensitivity with emotional immaturity. These things are completely different. I say it's marvelous to be sensitive. I'm certainly one of them. I'm an empath. But we sometimes cross a pathological line. So if you are sensitive and you are not getting attention, you can cross a pathological line and become too dramatic, at which time we've got a nice sophisticated personality disorder called the histrionic personality disorder sitting right there for you to take on and indulge in. This is somebody that always has a crisis, sees everything as a crisis. Everything is highly dramatic. It wears people out. Issues do wear people out. Not only the person doing it, but it certainly wears the people out around them. So I say, certainly be sensitive in a balanced, good way according to your nature. But everyone that's listening to the show and beyond must get over their own emotional immaturity, must rise above, recognize if they are indulging in histrionics and stop the drama. I deal with a lot of people that have had or are having the histrionic personality, and I'm going to tell you it confuses issues terribly. They can't see their way through to fix these things. So that's something that if you do recognize you have histrionics, if you do get too dramatic about things, that's something to look at and ultimately to fix. It will, while it makes the day-to-day interesting, a child thinks. You see, a lot of times this comes out of parental neglect, because if a parent neglects you, you should suffer the loudest. You know, you'll get attention that way, particularly if the parent is drawn to suffering. It's somebody that feels like they need to scream louder to be heard, suffer more. No, none of those things are true. You are wonderful, because everybody is in their own right. You don't need these devices and these little tricks to get attention and love. As a matter of fact, what's making me, I'm thinking about a friend of mine right now who her whole life is devoted to who gives her attention. She likes people that give her attention. She doesn't like people that don't give her attention. That should have been handled a long, long time ago. It's really sabotaging her now. And she gets very histrionic when somebody doesn't give her attention. That whole paradigm of needing attention and being hysterical if you don't get it has got to go. for a good life. You see, while it might have made the day-to-day more interesting for her growing up, when something really happens, when there's a crisis in health or somebody leaves, she doesn't have the wherewithal to work through it because of these issues. You understand? We need a very clear head in times of crisis. Okay, you got that one. Number 2, you sought and still seek validation from others. This particular woman goes on to say, I've always felt I never did things right or correctly. And when she'd do anything, she would always second guess herself multiple times a day, she says. I think that's a really wonderful revelation on her part. Do you go back and beat yourself up because when you were 8 years old, you didn't know how to drive the car? Well, this makes just about as much sense, that you didn't do things right or correctly. Well, you didn't. You were a kid. Kids don't. Kids have to learn. We learn by doing and making mistakes. We do. So the whole idea of beating yourself up because you never did things right. Do you realize what do I want to say here? It's a real punishment you're putting on yourself. You're saying, not that I didn't do anything right because of this one little incident. You see, you just take it and run with it and beat yourself up. You are saying there's something wrong with my character, that I never do things right. I never do things correctly. That's not true. That's simply not true. Another person in this forum went on to say, I seek validation from others. I can never tell if my feelings are valid or justified because somebody's told you they're not, right? You're going to hear a little later, parents even say, you don't feel that, and hand you an ice cream cone, and you wonder why you might have a weight problem later on. You see? Parents that don't know how to deal with their own emotions or in any way too busy for the child. You know, this is what I think that people don't understand. I have dealt in my practice with a lot of young mothers and young fathers. And they have baby after baby after baby. They love big families. It's wonderful. That's great. However, they have no idea the subtle points that they have to address. When your child is having a meltdown, that's when you sit down and you listen and you see what advice you can give and what you can do. But what happens when you have a big family? It's like, stop crying. I can't deal with that right now. I got too much to do. And is it a wonder that a lot of these kids don't feel validated? You see? So I think it's really important, if we are going to be parents, that we realize 1 or 2 kids and we are devoted to those moments that they need us as much as we can be and have a life. So this, I can never tell if my feelings are valid or justified. Also creates a situation where someone says, am I going to be all right? Is the situation going to be all right? Are we going to be all right? When absolutely nothing is happening. But they don't seem to have on the inside that they're always second guessing everything, especially themselves. Is it going to be all right? You should carry the fact that it is inside of you. Okay. Another thing that this creates, if you sought validation from others when you were a kid and are still seeking it, is that you overshare. And one of these women or men said that they overshared on Facebook to look for validation. Well, I think it's dangerous to overshare always, and certainly in a forum like Facebook. There's no reason for you to do that. Most of us that have done this work for a long time don't even get on that. I mean, we'll post a pretty picture and a sweet wish for people. But that's all. We don't need anybody telling us what to do. You don't need anybody telling you what to do. That may be shocking, but you don't. That's the path you're on to. Okay? Don't over-dramatize what I just said. Because in the early days of a lot of clients, what they'll do is go, but I'll never have anybody if I'm independent. I'll never have a partner because I can do it all myself. Gosh, that's just the biggest bunch of bull crap in the world. Don't do that. That's the histrionic personality, by the way. Okay? Because what love is on a higher level is choosing someone, if you're choosing a partner, to express the love that you are to. You want to give what you've learned to that special someone and have it returned, and you create this divine loop. So it isn't about, needing someone, and if I'm independent, nobody will want me because I'll be too independent. All that's just crazy. Stop it. Okay? Thank you. Number 3. As an adult, you never allow yourself to be vulnerable. One of these people went on to say, I stopped talking about myself to anyone because every time I did, one way or another, I would be told I was wrong or bad. Interesting behaviors that come out of this: isolation, withdrawal, somebody who hides and protects themselves above all instead of connecting with anybody, right? Okay. And this shows up in therapy too, because therapists are supposed to challenge you, call you on your stuff, right? Say, have you thought of this? Perhaps this was out there for you. What's interesting, and when you're working on this with a lot of people, they'll say, oh, I feel so scolded, you're scolding me. And it's like, excuse me? I didn't scold you. You're scolding yourself in your head. You've got to know the difference, because we can't get any, and this is a drama that you create. It's a firewall, if you will, that you create so that we can't move you. We will eventually move you, by the way. You stick with it long enough, we'll move that out of the way. But it's a firewall that says, oh no, I can't. I'm here to get over feeling like I'm being scolded, and you're scolding me. Oh, you've just essentially stopped everything, haven't you? We can't do anything. Okay. It's interesting because it's propaganda from the egoic child's mind, even when it isn't true. And if you are exclusively listening to that ego child's mind, well, who are you going to believe? Well, my job here is to turn on the higher mind for you so that you realize the ego child's mind when it speaks to you, and you can say, thank you very much, like you would to a child. I will handle this. I'll take it to the therapist. We'll work on it. I'll ponder this myself, but thank you. You may sit down now. You see, I heard this analogy years ago. Little kids, and all of this was created before you're 7 years old. Do you understand that? Certainly by the time you're 8. You are cooked like a fine Christmas goose by then, energetically and with all of these issues in place. You may develop them further as you age and make them more sophisticated, hence personality defenses and disorders. But that is a more sophisticated version of what's just energetically going on when you're younger. You're cooked then. All right. Now, you were for a reason. You needed to survive, but you have survived, my darlings. So now it's time to do something else. There's another woman here that says, if I showed even a little bit of negative emotion, sadness, anger, just plain being human in my early childhood home, it would be used against me and I'd be accused of being selfish, out of line, or having an attitude. I've heard that over and over from clients. This is certainly, I'm thinking of one person in particular who was a mother who was so self-involved and mentally ill, quite frankly. And she wanted her children to wait on her. She wanted her children to be her sounding board. She didn't want to get out of bed. She didn't want to be a mother to anybody. She ended up in a mental institution several times for electric shock therapy years ago. Good God. But she would use all these devices. She would say all of these things if the child was in any way causing trouble, according to her mood. It confuses children terribly. Okay. I want to say to all of you, my darlings, that if you have these things that we're talking about now, I say thank goodness you did. They helped you survive. But it is just not logical to keep these things. It's crazy inducing to keep these things. You don't want to keep anything that is so limiting on you. We want you to be comfortable with everything and know you can negotiate through everything because that's who you are. And you wouldn't even be listening to a show like this. Do you understand? If you didn't already know that. It's in you. All this knowledge, all this wisdom, this God we talk about is all you are. Good. Number 4. You weren't told you were loved. And this kind of thing really affects your self-esteem if you had a mother and father who never used love. And some cultures, by the way, don't. They don't say those words very easily. And you see, there's a culture that we grew up in, and there's also a culture to the race we are, and a culture to the families that we are born into. Have you ever thought of that? That there's a culture to your family. And sometimes they're expressive, sometimes they're too expressive, sometimes they're not expressive at all, and are very suppressed emotionally. There's another woman that goes on to say, growing up, no one ever told me how much I meant to them. I think that's why I seek to hear it so much now. And I want to say, yes, that is absolutely true and good for that kind of knowledge. It's marvelous to be aware of that. But you keep in mind that this wears people out around you. If people are always having to give you attention, always having to tell you it's all right, always having to tell you how much they love you, instead of spontaneously doing it, it's exhausting. And then you don't get what you want in the end, do you? Because people move away. You know, I laughed the other day. Who was I with? Oh, I remember. A friend of mine and I were with a couple we did not know real well. And we came away from this saying it was as if we were maple trees in Vermont and had a tap in our side and they drained all the energy out. They contributed very little to the conversation. They wanted you to tell them things. They wanted you to keep, there was no contributing here. And guys, I want to say that's not normal. That's not normal. Now, what is normal? There's a range of normal. There's a range of normal. So I'm not saying this little thing is the only normal. No, that's not what I'm saying. There's a range of normal, but they weren't playing in the range. okay? They just wanted it all from you. They wanted the attention. They wanted to be told they were loved. They wanted to have you give to them. And we did, because it was over soon. But it does wear people out. There's another person here that said she just didn't feel as appreciated as much as her siblings. And I want to ask you to think about that for a minute, because I've worked with many people who feel this way. However, is it true? Because when someone does have a lot of children and doesn't know what parenthood really requires, it is the capable child that often gets ignored because the mother and father feels like they're going to be all right. They're not the ones that get the attention, you see. It's a backhanded compliment in a way. But when a parent unconsciously does this, and this is combined with a parent who doesn't say, I love you, you can see how devastating it becomes to the child that surmises based on appearances. All of these things are based on appearances. Do you understand that? The child bases these things on appearances, but are appearances truth? No. Is the child sincerely not loved as much as other people? Well, she could be hiding because she's invisible. She could be the most capable child. She could have parents that are completely clueless. Somebody else could play the game better than she does. But does that mean that something's wrong with her? But you see, the thing that a child does is it says, something's wrong with me, or I would be loved as much as so-and-so. That's not true. You're going to hear even more about that, but that's not true. Okay. Number 5, you apologize for everything. This behavior certainly follows you into adulthood. But when you were a kid, you were saying sorry for everything, even though something wasn't your fault. Sometimes, if it was a real volatile household, you're doing that. Just keep the peace. Just calm everybody down, just to have some sense of control. I did it. It was my fault. But it wasn't, you see. This woman goes on to say, I always felt like I was a bother to everyone, and I have an extreme need to please people. It's so easy for you to say, and here's a pathological problem, because you can easily say, I'm a bother to everybody. I'm kind of a redundant child, if you will. But it is really easy to say and cross a line and say, I am a burden to myself and to my parents and to everybody that knows me. That's certainly not true. Nobody's a burden. Isn't it a privilege to know people? Isn't it a privilege to see all of our differences and our talents and what we can contribute? It's a joyous thing. Nobody's a burden to themselves and others unless they have been invalidated and told or implied that they are. She said, I was always apologizing for voicing my opinion. I over-apologize. I get anxious over the smallest things. And I'm terrified of figures of authority because my father terrified me. Interesting. I can remember years ago being in one of my corporate jobs as a coach. And I was brought in because there was a young man, this was long before COVID, but there was this young man who was extremely capable and very smart. But he would have to give a weekly report to the executives of his company. And he would just bloom and fall apart. He couldn't do it. He just would fall apart. He'd have a meltdown. Nobody could hear him. He'd mumble. He was inarticulate. It was terrible. So they asked me to come in and see if I could coach him, and I did. And I saw exactly what he was doing, and I said, why are you doing that? What kind of mother-father did you have? And he told me about this very domineering father, that the domineering father always told him he was wrong, and that he could do things better than he was doing. And anyway, he was one of these rather difficult and invalidating parents. Nevertheless, the clock was ticking, and I had to get this guy to present in a better way. So I said, who do you most admire in the world? Is there a movie star or an actor or a sports figure? He was really in sports. What do I know from sports? But anyway, do you know somebody that you really admire that was really get up and go? Because I had tried all my little devices, to get his energy higher and all that. So he did come up, and I can't remember the guy now, the golfer. He was a golfer, and he was high energy and was take charge. And I said, okay, can you imitate him? And he says, oh, yeah, I can imitate him. And I said, all right, go out that door. And then I want you to walk in and stand here in front of the end of the boardroom table. And I want you to deliver the opening few lines of your speech, your presentation as this guy. And so he did. He was great. He was just great. And I stopped him. And I said, that was marvelous. I said, do you realize that that guy isn't here? That is in you? And he just couldn't believe it. That guy was a part of who he was. And he wasn't using that guy, dusting him off and using his strong self for this presentation, because he was still thinking everybody was his father. Nobody's your dad, nobody's your mom, kids, except for you, by the way. That's how we limit ourselves. We become our mother and dads. If we had a real judgmental father or mother when we were growing up, then when we leave the house, we think we need that, and so we become them, and so we become the one that's a child that's still punished, and we become the punisher. That's not healthy. We have to grow past that. We have to become who we are in the grace of God and call up these parts of ourselves as they're needed to live a good life in the world. And we must be self-aware and self-acknowledge. And we must learn how to be our own advocates, because we're all nice people. When I say our own advocates, I'm certainly not talking about taking anything to any extreme, like narcissism. Are you kidding me? That's often somebody that doesn't believe all this about themselves. What about balance? What about just being who you are without all these crazy issues that we don't need anymore because they don't make sense to our lives now, right? Why don't you validate you, who you are, and live without doing some of these things that reveal your insecure past? Okay. Number 6. You felt invisible, and you feel invisible now from time to time. And boy, do I want to talk about this one. There's a woman that goes on to say, people sometimes talk to me as if I hadn't spoken, or they start a completely different conversation as a response to anything I've said. She says her voice feels lost in the woods. Someone else says, I'm always being overlooked. It's no wonder why I think I'm easily forgettable. I always felt invisible, like no one noticed I was even there. Okay, let's talk about this. And guys, I'm going to say to you, there is the most wonderful 3 DVD, and you don't even have to get it as a DVD. It's a download, I think, now. CD I made, a DVD I made originally. and it's called the IT series. The IT series is about being it. Pardon me. And I'm going to give you some tips out of it in just a second. But I want to say, if you want to hear about it in more detail, it's very powerful. And it's called the IT series because, you know, my background was show business. And I would walk into agents' offices. They knew I was a coach for actors. And they'd say, can you send me somebody with it? Send me somebody with it. And I'd have fun with them. And I'd say, tell me what it is. And they'd say, oh, I don't know what it is, but I'll recognize it when I see it. And I got to thinking about that through the years. And what's on that those DVDs or downloads now that you can find, by the way, on my website, Martha Novak, NOVAK.com. What's on that is the most powerful information about how you become it, a presence in the room, how you eclipse all others. For example, if you think of a boardroom table that people are sitting around, and you put someone who's just a novice actor at this table, and you put Sean Connery in his heyday at that table, who do you think's going to lead that table? It was his energy that would have led that table. You see? Guys, it's very important that you realize who you are and you work your energy well, because here's why people are saying something like that. Sure, they had parents who were ineffectual. Oh, yeah, of course, if they felt invisible. But here's the thing. Okay. Their energy, when you are hurt, when you feel bad, you pull your energy in and you pull it down. You pull the level down, you pull the energy in. That's a protective mode. Everybody is invisible in that protective mode. This is what you do also when you're very depressed. So nobody sees you, so people talk over you. I never will forget going into, I was coaching a business. Actually, I was just coaching the man, as I remember. He was the CEO of this company. And he said that everybody talked over him when he was having a roundtable meeting, and that they wouldn't let him finish his sentences. That was one of the problems. And there were two women down at the end who always talked to each other and took over the meeting. And he said, I tried to teach him this, and he said, would you come to me to the meeting and really see what I'm doing? I didn't need to do that. I already saw it and his energy, but I said, sure, I'll be glad to do it. It made you feel more secure. So I went. And what happens is he'd start out strong, right? He'd start out strong. He'd remember to keep his energy level up, keep your energy level up. And then it would just dwindle down and he'd lose effectiveness and he'd just disappear. And that's when people would talk over him. He wasn't there energetically as a presence. Don't you see? The other thing that he was making a mistake doing was these women down at the end who were going to take over the meeting, because they talk among themselves and then take over the meeting. He should not have allowed that. He should have interrupted them as soon as they did it and said, Francis, you look like you have something important to say to all of us. Say it to us. Say it to the table. Say it to me. And not let them talk to each other. But he should be the sun in the solar system. He was the leader of this company after all, but in name only at that point. So, extremely important, guys. You must learn to keep your energy level up and sustain it up, because you're unconscious. Everybody is. You know, think of you driving a car. You think of driving the car when you turn it on and when you put your seatbelt on and when you're backing out. But then you start thinking about other things. So you can't sustain this very long unless you have trained the cells of your body to be on. That's what this CD does. It trains you to, over a 2.5-month period of time, to be on and to keep your energy level up so you are a viable presence. Very important. Okay? You cannot continue to be self-protective. You've got to learn you're all right in higher energy and invisible energy. Okay. Number 7. You were told your feelings were wrong. She says, when I was being emotional, I was told to stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Woo! And only positive feelings were accepted. And I'm going to say, if that, I know a lot of people were never even, their positive feelings were never even accepted. She said, there's another woman here that went on to say, and this was wonderful. She said, I was told I needed to be more understanding of others anytime I was upset. It felt like I wasn't really allowed to be mad at people for anything because that meant I wasn't being understanding enough. See, the child took it in as there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me that I have to hide, right? It causes me to go into massive guilt spirals after I lose my temper now. Well, guys, that's normal for you to lose your temper from time to time. It's normal to be frustrated if you're on the phone with an IT person and you just can't seem to get anywhere. Guys, nobody is asking you anymore to deny your feelings. We just want you not to live in these negative feelings and not to be defeatist and to learn to put them in its proper place and to go on and enjoy your life beyond those things once you have resolved that. Someone else said here about, I was told my feelings were wrong. Any feeling, thought, or reaction, even a calm and open one, I question and doubt if it's okay to feel and think and act that way. I grew up thinking that everyone's feelings were okay except for my own. It makes opening up really difficult now because I feel everyone will judge me and that I'm not a good enough person because of it. Let's just be human. What do you say? We have to be human. We have to be evolving humans. I don't know of a better way to say it, guys. Your feelings were never wrong. No one told you how to deal with them. No one told you they were all right. No one told you how to resolve them and work through them so you could be on the other side of them and live a happy life. You're learning that now. Okay? And by the way, what we're going to do at the end of all this, how's our time? At the end of all this, we're going to talk about what you need to do to fix all this, okay? So that's coming up. Number 8, your career dreams were made fun of. My family would make fun of my dreams. They would say it was impossible or stupid for me to do whatever it was I wanted to do. It really stuck with me and really made it hard for me to settle on one career path. Do you see, when somebody makes fun of something that you do and you might have a penchant for, however undeveloped, it causes you to doubt your own worth. Do you understand that? It causes you to doubt your own worth. My precious dad was a CPA. Now, I want you to hear the story. He was a really nice dad. However, he was probably one of the most frustrated men in the world because I think he would have loved to be something other than a CPA. But he got scared when he was a young man and his wife was having a baby. And he was scared, having just come out of World War II. And so he got advice from someone saying, well, the work you'll always have is being a CPA. You'll always be assured of having that work. I don't think he liked it. His whole life he sat at that desk, and I don't think he liked it. He would have been a much better farmer. He would have been a much better, probably, scientist along the way. So here comes me. And I am excelling in the arts. I'm a good writer. I can act. I can sing. I can dance when I'm a little kid to a certain extent. But sing, yeah. And perform, absolutely. I could do that all. My dad was always proud of me, but he'd always pat me on the head. And I don't remember him ever using these words, but it was something like, poor little artist, you'll never make a living. I'll have to take care of you. And I got that message loudly and clearly. And I had to work through it myself. So don't think that you come out of the womb looking like this. Okay? Looking like anything. Looking clear. No, you have to work on it. I had to work on it. You know, I had to decide at one point, am I going to be the poor little artist in my father's prediction for me? Or am I really good at what I do? Am I going to even get better because I'm devoted to my crafts? And am I going to open to knowing more about what I should be doing? And I chose the latter. Took some work. To get the Father's voice out of there, to get, a little pat on the head. No, you don't have to live under that anymore. Okay. Number 8. That was number 8. Your career dreams were made fun of. Number 9. Your parents missed certain basic details, like picking you up from school, having a sense of your schedule, helping you get around to places that you needed to go to, taking you to a birthday party, but reciprocating with that child and doing something nice for them. Some parents just don't do that. Some parents completely forget their kid, picking up their kid at the bus stop. That would certainly invalidate you, wouldn't it? That these parents don't have you on their agenda, on their dance card. I think so. Number 10, you were told you were selfish. This is one I often hear. Being told I was selfish and self-centered on a regular basis while I grew up, I knew in my mind that I wasn't, but after a while you hear it enough and you think you are. I wanted my voice heard and my feelings recognized, but I had to learn that it wasn't selfish or self-centered. You see, this is another place we mix up things, because acknowledging your feelings is the right thing to do, and having a parent acknowledge your feelings. How do you feel, darling? Well, I can understand how you might feel angry. You see, that's a validation, isn't it? I can understand how you feel that way. Invalidation is, well, don't feel that way. Oh, for God's sake. Be more understanding of others. Or don't feel that way. That's an invalidation. But saying, I understand how you feel. So acknowledging your feelings is the right thing to do, even now. But constant self-absorption is an issue to be addressed. You understand? Acknowledging your feelings is the right thing to do. Being self-absorbed all the time, no. And we've got those things confused because of parents that didn't know what they were saying to us. You understand? In the ego child's mind, we're all selfish. But when you cross that threshold into the arenas of consciousness, looking after yourself is the right thing to do. You do it for different reasons than your selfish motives. No. But the reason that you can achieve the higher self mind is because you had the ego child's mind and you've worked through a lot of this. Do you understand? Guys, be sure and write me or call me if you don't understand what I'm talking about. I saw something real cute on the internet the other day that a man had said he'd listened to my show and he thought it was most interesting, but he didn't understand what I was saying. So don't let me pass you by, please. Ask me what you want to ask me. Okay. Number 11. You're now a perfectionist. You can see it in your day-to-day life. This person went on to say, I'm a toxic perfectionist. Toxic perfectionist. There is such a thing. When you put tasks before people exclusively, that's a toxic perfectionist. Okay. And she said, I've created a cycle of negative self-talk to try to prove to myself and everyone else that I'm good enough and worthy of attention. I grew up knowing I would never be enough. Wow. I now feel I have to be perfect to make up for that, for people to love me. It takes a huge toll on my mental and physical health and emotional health, honey. Don't forget that. Perfectionism has to go. I always, as a corporate coach, I often interview people that are interviewing for jobs in these companies I work for. And I always try to get them to talk about perfectionism, because we're not going to hire you if you say you're a perfectionist and how you play that out. So be careful. Don't be a perfectionist. We've got to get you by that. See, a perfectionist is someone who doesn't take a chance on love. They don't really know what love is. They haven't experienced it. They haven't really taken it in to know what it is and know that they're worthy of it. Because, after all, doesn't it make sense? Love is all you are. And when you give it, you receive it. There you go. It's as easy as that. But you see, it's not that easy because you've got all these issues on top saying, don't trust it, don't trust it, don't trust it. All right, number 12. Your parents didn't want to hear about your problems. Yeah, well, I hear that a lot. But I thought we already solved that, your mother may say. That as a child, I didn't have permission to have difficulty with things. And the parent became exasperated when you had another problem and another problem and another problem you needed help with. It's a shame how parents sometimes really don't comfort you, You can yell at a child for not doing a math problem well. You can get exasperated and furious, or you can start with a validation. I understand. I never did this well. Or I've known people that don't do this part well either. But let's work through it together. Does that seem like it came from another planet? Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's not a lot of parenting experiences. They just get frustrated. They'll say, do it yourself or you'll never learn. They'll say, go ask your father, who is not there and never is there. They'll throw something across the room out of frustration because you're not getting it. Nothing wrong with you. It's just not what you do, okay? But you have to learn it as part of the growth process, Number 13, you sabotage yourself as an adult. This person goes on to say, I self-sabotage. I have a difficult time being around others. I wreck relationships by pushing people away. I set myself up to do things to make myself look bad when it's not how I feel at all, because I self-sabotage. This is someone so caught in perfection and so caught in self-immolation as a means of protecting themselves. We self-sabotage in a lot of ways. We don't just sabotage relationships. We sabotage our careers. We sabotage a lot of things. I think I did some radio shows recently on that, so go find those, okay? you want to hear more about it. Number 14. You never heard a genuine apology. Guys, people know when you are sincerely apologizing and when it's just bull. Insincerity can be read by anybody who's looking. So this person goes on to say, being constantly told, I'm sorry you're letting your feelings be hurt. Whoa. Or, I'm sorry you're so sensitive. You see, those two remarks are not really apologies. They're not saying, I am sincerely sorry that I hurt your feelings. They're saying something's wrong with you, that your feelings were hurt. Ooh, not really good apologies. Number 15. You now struggle to get in touch with your feelings. Well, I could understand why if you were invalidated at every turn, don't you? Okay? A lot of times people will completely turn off their emotions. They'll feel no emotions. They're what we call non-emotive. They're suppressing their feelings. And you can only do that so long before you then have meltdowns or you have explosions, because you're supposed to express yourself as you go along, right? Not stuffed all inside. Okay. I see people struggling to get in touch with your feelings for two reasons. There, I'm sure more, but if you came from a household that was highly dramatic and everything was a drama and everything was histrionic, a lot of times the kid, particularly if this kid is a reasoner, I listened to my show about the LCS. I think I talked about it last week. And learning communication sequence. If someone is thinks a lot and doesn't feels as a second or third response in their learning and communication sequence, the thing that happens here is that the emotions in the house scare a little kid. It's such force, so they turn off their emotions to control it more. And that's how you get somebody that just doesn't look very animated and can't tell you how they feel. Years ago, I was working for a company, and they had to let a man go from a project because he was all business and couldn't do a good presentation because there was no feeling element to what he was doing. And I remember asking him, can you tell me how you feel about being fired? And he said, well, I can certainly see why they did it because of this, and this. I said, yes, but how do you feel about being fired? And he said, well, if I were one of the executives in this, I would have looked at this and said I was not a good candidate either. And I had to stop him and said, Tom, how do you feel about being? Are you sad? That's feeling, you see. So many people, oh, thank you, Hope. Oh, I'm so glad you're listening, my darling. Hope is a close friend of mine, everybody. Do you realize, my dears, that that people get thinking and feeling mixed up? And you do a great service to yourself if you sit down and go, wait a minute, am I thinking or am I feeling here? What's going on here? What is this remark coming out of? My thinking self, my feeling self? Am I answering the question, whatever the question is, according to how I should be answering the question? And of course, ideally, if you have not suppressed your feelings, you are answering as a whole person. Everything should be there. But oftentimes we divide it up. we mustn't struggle to get in touch with our feelings. So I told you there were two households that created a suppression of feelings. One is a household that has too much, and there's no room for the child to feel. The second is a household where nobody has any feelings. If the parents have never had any feelings and are suppressing their feelings, of course they have feelings, they're suppressing their feelings. If the parents are doing that, then the child that's born into that household quickly learns that they can't have them either. And that's what creates this, the suppression of feelings. But let me assure you, they are there. They are there. The first thing I do with people is have them pull that emotion sheet, start working with the emotion sheet so they can become more fluid and flexible with recognizing what they're feeling and putting a word to it. That's the first step. Okay. Number 16, you were told your struggles are all in your head. Hearing, what's wrong with you? When struggling is a very hard thing, especially if you're depressed. This person goes on to say, some people say, snap out of it. What is the phrase? Buck up, buttercup. Man up. Or, no, we're supposed to feel our feelings. That's a valid part of our learning process, guys. We're supposed to feel our feelings, express our feelings, get on the other side of them, and go on. That's what we're supposed to do. Number 17, you thought love was earned. I'm here to tell you that, and I'm going to tell you what these people said, but love is not earned. Love is opened to. You don't earn the love of God. You're just open to more and more of it because you are past your issues. You understand? She goes on to say, I feel I have to please people to earn their love. I ended up being the only kid who'd help around the house, but instead of feeling appreciated, I felt resentful of my siblings who were out playing. And I always felt I wasn't doing enough. So that certainly makes you the workaholic, makes you the perfectionist, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Another person says, I've spent my life trying to buy love from my family and friends. I'm bankrupt emotionally, spiritually, and financially. There's nothing left. And the people that I've spent a fortune on are gone. I am learning to love me and put myself first. Well, I think that's a great thing. But that is bad parenting that created that. Do you understand? Number 18. You sought affection from strangers. I think of Blanche Dubois. I always depend on the kindness of strangers. A famous line from Streetcar Named Desire, Tennessee Williams. This woman says, I would go to anyone who would listen to me. I badly wanted a listening ear. So I would voluntarily spill my whole life to strangers and still do. I find more solace in online friends and writing than I did in my own family. This is someone who doesn't know boundaries, doesn't know appropriateness, because she feels so deprived, he feels so deprived that it creates this behavior. All right? Knowing what created this behavior is half the battle. And then, because I don't live with you, I need for you to stop this. When you feel the inclination to start spilling your guts to somebody, and however inappropriate that is, stop. I know some families, I'm always surprised at some of my clients, and I know some families who insisted that their child tell them everything. Insisted. And so the kid, to be loved, grows up telling the parent everything. And here they are at 60 years old telling their 90-year-old parent everything still, however inappropriate that is. You should be an adult, right? You shouldn't be telling your parent everything. And yet they do. And they're shocked when I say, why are you doing that? Because they've always done it. They've normalized it. You see? Number 19, you feel the need to justify yourself to others as an adult. This woman goes on to say, I guess it's this woman, I've had the habit for as long as I can remember of over-explaining things, as if I'm on the witness stand. I now know I've developed the habit in response to frequent gaslighting from my family. And another person says, I don't think anyone would listen or believe me. Okay. You don't need to justify anything. If you feel it, you feel it. You don't need to just justify anything. You just don't have to. You just need to know yourself well. Number 20, you are made to feel unwanted. Told by my mother and my father that they didn't want a girl, certainly, and no one ever denied it, and I'm an only child, I felt bad my whole life, as one person said. I was never called anything but Marion's daughter, another person said. And then this one was interesting. My mother telling the same people over and over again that the last thing she wanted was another child. Liza was an accident, she said. If I go by what she says, nothing good ever came from having me. And it seems to have enforced the dynamic between my siblings and me. You see, the siblings are going to take that on. What's this kid here for? She doesn't. She was an accident. She's the one that isn't wanted. I had to do what I was told, and I was teased and criticized, and my mother to this day allows it. I felt not really a part of the family and not really a person because I was a mistake. If your family has a lot of kids, you can certainly feel that. I even notice it, not to diminish people, please don't think I am, but I even notice it in my little dog. My little dog is a poodle. Many of you all have seen him, and he was reared with a lot of siblings. He had 7 siblings in his litter, and there were 7 more that were born in a litter on the same day, all in this house. So he was reared essentially with 13 siblings, right? I think it's fascinating to watch his behavior now because he gets very jealous. He does. He gets very jealous. He's protective of other dogs. We've been, as I said, house sitting the dog. A little protective of everything. He doesn't realize that dog makes, 25 of him and could snatching him up with one bite, but luckily she's enormously gentle. These things do mark us as human beings and animals, because we are nothing but little animals after all. 21. Your family members play favorites. One woman goes on to say, my parents played favorites with 6 girls. It was never me or 3 others. It was always the same 2. I feel like I never mattered, even though I was the oldest and was forced to help raise the other children. Can you imagine the resentment that would come from that? I'm sure you can. Another person goes on to say, being scolded for making anything less than a B, while my siblings were praised for making a D. It's too easy to say, because they were favored. But what if they thought more of you and your intellect? You see? Who knows? I don't think we see our lives realistically anymore. I think we see them quite, what do I want to say? They're all myths. And I think they're based on what we came in to learn and get through. So how important are our issues in the end, kids? They just aren't. Number 22, you were put down constantly. My dad says I couldn't carry a tune with a bushel basket in a bushel basket, I think she means, while my siblings and my mother were singing. And I was laughed at by my mother when I told her how I felt after my sister was born. Yeah, guys, being put down by others during interactions and hearing that on a daily basis is not good. Do you understand, as an adult, if that is happening to you, you've got to be enormously resilient. Every single time something like that is said to you, you have to know better. You have to know more. You have to say, that's simply not true for me. It takes a lot of energy, doesn't it? Probably twice as much or more, just to live. And you don't have that kind of awareness when you're a little kid. What is repeated is what's taken in and believed. What you hear over and over and over again is what you have believed, because your subconscious mind does not contradict you. Do you understand? Subconscious mind just takes it in. It doesn't argue about anything. It just takes in what you hear, particularly if what you hear in a repetitive manner, and it makes you become that. But you can undo that programming as well, and that's what we're doing here. Number 23, your parents didn't show up for you. This person says, my parents never came to one soccer game or volleyball game because they were too boring. The parents weren't boring, but they said the games were boring. I grew up with someone similar to this in my family. It was my uncle. He was just quite brilliant. He was a brilliant guy, but very, very self-involved. And he never came to anything that I did. Not ever. Not one play, not one musical, not one recital, not anything. He never came. But he'd always give great Christmas presents. And he did that to his wife, and he did that to his son, who is no longer with us. And I just think that would be a terrible household to live in. You know, you want to have somebody say, good for you, good for you, great. Number 24, people's kindnesses surprise you now as an adult because you're not used to them. But I'm here to tell you, you don't have to cope alone to anything, not to anything. You have it all inside you now, all the resilience you need. So I've written down some ideas here about how to get through some of this, if I can even read my own writing. Let's put on the glasses to make sure I can. Many people, guys, aren't on their own side. So my first tip is acknowledge bad parenting, see everybody realistically, and stop making excuses for them. I had a recent client whose father and two brothers were just beasts. The father was an alcoholic. The brothers were horrible. And this poor little girl didn't have anybody as a protector except her mom, and her mother was just completely out to lunch and not there for her either. But this woman still has wrapped herself around the mother who's not even on this earth anymore and become very mother, like her mother, and small and protective and a little bitter because she doesn't want to be alone. And that was her family, and she's still trying to breathe life into the old horse. And when I say, sweetheart, your mother wasn't a good mom, she says, oh, but she only had a second grade education or whatever it was. It's like, that's no excuse. Stop making excuses. I'm not saying vilify anybody, guys. I'm saying somebody has to, and this is point number 2, advocate for the child you were. Nobody is on the child's side when you keep making excuses for bad parenting. And I need for you to be on the side of the child. That's the most healing thing you can do. Advocate for the child you were. Number 3, see the choices that could have been made, the words that could have been said, and say them to yourself now. Okay? Rethink some of these situations. Well, if you're making an excuse for the mother, and the mother said, let's say you ran away from home, and when you came home, instead of the mother saying, oh, darling, don't do that again, let's go talk, tell me what you need that you weren't getting from me, let's talk about it, right? Instead, she just turns around, walks into the house, and doesn't speak to you for 2 or 3 days. I think you need to rewrite that scene, don't you? You'll realize what an unaware parent, neglectful parent, bad parent you might have had if you look at things realistically. And why not now? Because your whole authenticity, your whole life, and your whole empowerment is there getting through this. Empowerment, who you are, who you know yourself to be. You've got to find that, guys. That's what consciousness is, isn't it? Being more conscious, being more conscious. Number 4, I hope you've written down or will listen to the show again, realizing each of these 24 things. If you find yourself doing them, stop. If you find yourself speaking this language, stop. Write a different script. Choose a different way of behaving and try to stop this. Try to stop this. Realize why you have a compulsion not to stop. What is it? What is it about? What happened in your early childhood home that makes you compelled to overtalk to a stranger? Why is it so important? And I know it's not rational, and you know it too, to get this person to smile at you or to, admire you for just a moment. Why is that so important? Because every time you do that, you're entrenching the fact that you need to do that, and more damaging, you're denying yourself. You're denying yourself as a loving, wonderful person who doesn't need to play these games. Every time you use one of these, you're going back and picking up the child instead of standing in the adult, empowered adult that you are. You see? Number 5, I want you to realize something very important, and that is nothing's ever been wrong with you. How's that? Nothing has ever been wrong with you except you've been getting in your own way. If we can find out how you're getting in your own way, why you're getting in your own way, and what's the truth of your way, you'll do beautifully in life. You are the aspect of God you are. You've just learned misinformation along the way that's clogging this wonderful channel of who you really are as the aspect of God. That's all this is about. And you keep choosing those limitations over and over again, like protectiveness, and these ways of protecting you that really, don't even work anymore. And it's so interesting how the ego child's mind does not know then from now. I worked with a man years ago who had loads of issues, and he did real well after a while. He really did. But I remember him being a perfectionist, and he was such a perfectionist. He pushed people away because they didn't like to be told they were wrong all the time, right? He was somebody that told people they were wrong all the time. And he said, and he did something remarkable, sailing across the world on a boat, on his own boat. And when I said that to him, that you don't have to go around telling everybody how to do things, and you can relax that, because everybody has their own way of doing things, and nothing is right or wrong here. It's just our way of doing things. He said, well, if you're on a boat, you could die with that attitude. And he went on to lecture, and I stopped him and I said, do you realize you're on a boat? You're not on a boat, and you haven't been for the last 25 years. He was rather shocked at that. I say that to you too, kids. You all are tending to live like you're still in your early childhood home. And there's no reason for that anymore. What has been learned can be unlearned through the grace of God, honestly. Through the fact that all of this is just energy. And it does require effort on your part, though. Because you remember that one of the universal laws is chaos to order. And if you're going from chaos to order, it takes energy. So becoming new and different and working without these old things in mind, these old ideas in mind, without the old belief that I have been invalidated and continue to live as the invalidated child, you don't have to do that anymore. You, my dears, can validate yourselves. God is all you are. Let's use that higher mind and realize what you're doing and live a wonderful life. Okay. Guys, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much, Becky, for communicating with me. That's very sweet. So that's our show for today. Next week, we'll be here with another one. And I look forward to talking with you at that time. Thank you for all your sweet comments and for being with me today. I appreciate it. And for walking this path. We're all in this together. And I certainly hope one day I'll meet every one of you in person. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. Thank you. Thank you so much. Love you very much. You guys have a good one, and I'll see you next week, okay? Why don't we say a prayer together, though, right now? How about that? Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, thank you so much for all of this, and keep us open and aware of what we're doing. Hi, Scarlett. Open and aware of what we're doing. Give us the insight into our personal lives, the awareness into our personal lives that we don't have to do all this misinformation anymore. We don't have to live this way anymore. We've got other choices. We've got other choices to tell ourselves because we now are the beneficent mother and father to ourselves. We open to this, dear God, and the awareness that comes with it. And we say this prayer in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of every single person listening to the show. We thank you so much. And dear hearts, thank you so much for getting the word around about these shows. I really appreciate it. If you would be kind enough to send them out or tell people about these shows, that just means a lot because our conscious community is growing, and that just delights me to see. I can't tell you how thrilling that is when you people are coming in almost every day to join, you know. Thank you. Okay. You're the front line of getting the word out, and that means so much to me. You are all friends. Whoops, the woman is my taskmaster is here, 90 seconds, but you're all my friends. So thank you so much for doing this. And I love you very much. I want you to have a good week. Stay well and healthy. Please do that. Okay. Bye-bye.